For nearly a decade, at least 7 kids the Arizona Department of Child Safety was charged with protecting said they were starved, beaten, burned, pepper sprayed, and pulled from school. We didn't get a single record from DCS, but we got enough from Maricopa police reports, going over hundreds of pages and photos, as well as hours of body camera footage that reveal DCS failed to remove the kids, despite nearly a dozen detailed reports. Now we want some answers for you, the public that funds DCS, for the thousands of other kids still in their care, but most of all, for those 7 children who spent years wondering, will help ever come?
Doesn't let us do anything at all. She doesn't even let us go play outside.
But on a rare trip to the dentist to fix rotting teeth, one of Michelle Hobson's adopted kids confided in an older biological daughter about the alleged abuse behind locked doors.
She starved me for 5 days straight. I threw up one day because of it. She didn't care. She still did not feed me.
The 7 kids, ranging from 2 years old to 13, told police they were routinely beaten.
She used her phone to pound on my head. His stomach is literally covered in bruises. She spits in people's faces.
The kids told police Michelle took pleasure in burning them with a lighter, freezing them in ice baths, and even using pepper spray.
She makes us sit with the pepper spray on us for a whole entire day straight. She emptied 2 bottles on me.
Those canisters eventually found in the mess of the home next to diapers.
If we pee ourselves, she doesn't let us have water for at least a whole entire day straight.
This is as bad of a case without any fatality as I can remember ever reviewing.
Pinal County Attorney Kent Volkmer.
I mean, there was violence perpetuated on the genitals of small children. They were locked in a room. They were deprived of food. And it was all done if they didn't perform these little skits and these little videos.
Those little videos were viewed hundreds of millions of times on Michelle's lucrative YouTube channel, Fantastic Adventures.
She was making, I think the last few months, hundreds of thousands of dollars a month.
The videos were filmed and edited by Michelle's older biological sons. The family even had a green room for special effects and Hobson's torture.
She makes us sleep in a green closet.
How many other people sleep in there?
3 other kids that sleep only in pull-ups. And she has a lock on it, so we can't get out to have to pee.
We go to bed, and the next morning, she won't let us out. Like, we asked her, and she says no.
If she was in a bad mood, Michelle would reportedly remove the light bulbs. And the kids, they'd be locked in the dark, starving in dirty diapers for days.
When trauma happens to a child, it's severe and it's long-lasting.
Robert Pastor is a Valley attorney who specializes in abuse.
Because of what I do, some of the cases I've handled, I'm not surprised.
One room in the house was immaculate, likely for filming. The rest, filthy. While YouTube viewers were oblivious to the horrors off camera, Arizona's Department of Child Safety was not.
It was a collective failure of the system.
While their goal is to protect children, they seem to fail in that effort too frequently.
Just moments ago, we told you about the horrors behind closed doors surrounding the so-called YouTube mom. Millions of viewers and neighbors had no idea it was happening, but DCS did know. Here's Zach Crenshaw with more of his investigation.
Not only did DCS fail to catch the abuse during their monthly visits when Michelle was fostering 14 kids over a decade, some until 2019, but the state agency was alerted over and over about visible signs of neglect and abuse. In this police investigation, detectives detailed the 11 times between 2011 and 2019 that teachers, siblings, even the kids themselves told DCS they needed help. 11 times the kids were left with Michelle. The first documented April 2011. A babysitter told DCS the kids yell and cry after Michelle will lock them in a bedroom. DCS found the details unsubstantiated. 2 years later, May 2013, one child told her teacher, Michelle makes her stand in the corner when she gets home from school until she has to beg. Finding unsubstantiated. A week later, another report from the school outlining 3 years of general neglect. The adopted daughter, with mild intellectual defects, told her inquiring teacher Michelle took her toothbrush, which is why there was gunk all over her teeth and gums. The teacher told the agency Michelle was rarely involved, but had a fear of harm and retaliation due to the report. That fear realized 3 days later, when, after a CPS visit to the home, Michelle contacted the school and withdrew the girl. Records reveal Michelle gloated to the teacher, saying, quote, "The caseworker laughed at the allegation and did not take it seriously." Findings unsubstantiated.
Do you go to school?
Nope. I'm homeschooled, but I don't even do school homework at home or anything.
Back to the DCS reports, and a year later, August 2014, a Gilbert daycare tells DCS Michelle's foster kids are unbathed, covered in feces, and have infected blisters and rashes all over. Despite all the details, the findings, once again, unsubstantiated. 9 months later, April 2015, a foster child says that 2 years ago, Michelle, quote, threw a can of food at her head and it left a scar. Was the scar ever looked at? We don't know, but the findings, you guessed it, unsubstantiated. 3 months later, July 2015, DCS is told that one of Michelle's girls has serious bruising, a horrible rash, and another daughter appears to be starving. Again, nothing was done, unsubstantiated. The most egregious failure, though, happened December 2017. A boy ran from Michelle's Maricopa house naked to avoid another beating. Michelle took a risk and called 911. Officers found the child shivering in a backyard. He begged them not to take him home, saying, "I'm being starved," and pepper sprayed. Officer Michael Takagi documented the kid's disclosures, writing, quote, "She keeps them out of school so officials don't see bruises or hits them in areas that are not visible." Then he called DCS. 6 days later, a DCS worker finally did a welfare check. Reports show she was told ahead of time, quote, "Mother is reported to know CPS and will brief the children and tell them she will hurt them if they say anything." How, after all of those details, Michelle managed to keep the kids is a mystery. But her older biological daughters told officers this in 2019.
Every time it happens, they give her a heads up. They tell her what's happening because she's a part of the foster care system. They interviewed the kids right in front of her, right in front of my mother.
DCS yet again found that abuse unsubstantiated, and they refused to give us any records, even after Hobson died due to health issues in late 2019.
They want to keep this information under wraps.
In hindsight, there was some mistakes.
Maricopa PD also failed on multiple accounts. Officer Takagi never recategorized the juvenile problem to criminal abuse, so detectives were never flagged to investigate. His lieutenant, Mary Turner, also failed to review the report and catch his mistake. 2 years later, a supervisor would write, "The children were subject to more abuse because of their failures." In fact, Michelle retaliated. The kids told detectives in 2019 that after that runaway incident, Mom got mad. She put us in that room for a really long time. I think it lasted more than a day. So we got scared to tell again, because that was after the cops came once. For all their mistakes, Lieutenant Turner and Officer Takagi were suspended without pay for 10 hours, a single shift.
Does that seem like appropriate punishment to you, given how many more months the kids suffered?
Unfortunately, when we make mistakes as a police, the stakes are high. And we can't make that hurt go away. We have to own that and move on.
They shirked their responsibility, and sadly, these children had to live in this sort of torturous environment for far too long.
I spanked the child, what? No crime in the house? No.
It's important to acknowledge the kids told police Hobson was a manipulator.
Ms. Hobson specifically chose children that had significant mental health issues, knowing full well that those with significant mental health issues are going to be less believable.
You're not telling me what was said. No, I'm not going to tell you because there's an investigation.
Michelle would show DCS investigators the stocked fridge and packed pantry, but the kids say they were being starved, still fearful to eat even after officers arrived in 2019.
We're going to protect you. Is there anything in here that you want to eat right now while we're waiting? Is seriously anything? Look, you got some chips.
She's gonna smell my breath.
No, she's not. No, she's not. No, she's not. You're not going to talk to Mom right now.
The children also said Michelle forced them to lie.
Last time CPS and cops came, I wanted to tell them the truth, but they wouldn't let. My mom told me to say all lies, and if I didn't say lies, she would have She threatened me and said she was going to kill me.
Even with those lies, though, Pastor says DCS should have gotten to the truth.
The idea that, oh, children lied and therefore we couldn't have known, well, that's contrary to everything that they're trained to do, which is to look at the totality of the circumstances, and you begin to put it together and you say, hey, there's something going on here. We need to look more closely.
But a closer look never happened.
As a result, we had a number of young children that suffered potentially irreparable harm.
It's harm that will last a lifetime.
The court said this is a person that you can trust, and they were violated so horribly.
Many I've spoken with say Arizona's Department of Child Safety needs massive changes to better protect kids.
Because there weren't adequate resources, they cut corners or they made judgment calls, and as a result, these children got harmed.
We probably report to DCS, I would say, at least 5 times a day. And then you magnify that across the state.
The Arizona legislature, year in and year out, has not given these caseworkers the resources, the training, the payment and salary they need to make sure children are safe.
DCS denied all of my records requests, citing confidentiality, even though Hobson is dead and the children are anonymous.
We deserve to know, why are so many children in the DCS system being hurt?
DCS Director Mike Faust also declined our multiple requests for an interview.
You can't have accountability unless you have transparency. And DCS is an organization that we know one thing. They do not like this type of information finding its way into the public domain.
Do you think any of the kids should live there?
No, I think they're not safe there.
The older sister called this cell phone video a, quote, last-ditch effort to save her siblings.
I want to get them out of there, and I don't want CBS to play their games.
I want all my other sisters and brothers to be in a safe home.
I love you, and I don't even know you.
I love you too, because you're saving me from this house.
I know, baby.
But the larger question remains. Will we ever know how DCS handled this internally?
I hope so. I sincerely hope so, because it's not just these kids, it's all the other kids who are still in DCS care.
It's been 2 years now since Hobson was arrested. 2 years for DCS to reflect on all of those unsubstantiated reports, those missed opportunities to save the children sooner. Not only did the agency deny all of our interview and public records requests, they declined to answer if any changes have been made or any employees held accountable. You can read their full statement, as well as more exclusive details, on our website. Zach Crenshaw, ABC 15, Arizona. This is Officer Greg Clark after a teen accused of trespassing surrenders.
Does Mesa Police have a culture problem?
No, we do not.
But they may have a Greg Clark problem. This 2018 policy violation led to a 20-hour suspension. But as you'll see, that discipline didn't stop him from another reprimand over his use of force just a year later.
Stand up.
Since 2019, Officer Clark has been suspended 130 hours, roughly 16 workdays. The unpaid discipline stems from 2 incidents, the most recent involving this man, Mitchell Knutson. In September 2019, when confronted for sleeping in a private parking lot, Mitchell decides to run.
Get over here now.
The female officer catches him, cuffs him, and then Clark shows up.
Just help me stand him up.
In the video, blurred by Mesa PD,
Stand up.
Clark can be seen kicking the handcuffed man, then pulling him up by his hair.
Okay.
Clark's suspension taking place in April 2020.
110 hours of unpaid time off, some additional remedial training, and placed on disciplinary probation for 1 year.
But Assistant Chief Ed Wessing acknowledges
He was disciplined for a very similar incident.
You're not getting away, man.
Remember that teen accused of trespassing? In March 2018, the young man runs from Clark and another bike officer. They eventually catch up to him, and he's clearly surrendering when Clark rams his knee into the teen's back, cuffs the kid, pulls him up, and seconds later, sweeps his leg, knocking him to the ground. Then Clark picks up his cell phone, tosses it at the wall, cracking the screen even more. A sergeant later wrote Clark demonstrated, quote, reckless, poor decision-making. The now current chief, Ken Cost, put Clark on a 7-step corrective action plan, which stated failure to immediately improve may result in disciplinary action, including termination. But just 3 months after that corrective action was complete, Clark did this.
That's unacceptable.
Also unacceptable in Chief Wessing's mind, how another officer on scene talked to Mitchell.
I'm going to take this off you. If you move, you're going to hit the ground so hard. You understand?
What do you make of that language?
That's unacceptable. We do have in our code of conduct a violation of discourtesy where our officers should not be using profanity.
But that officer was never disciplined.
There's going to be less of a tolerance for mistakes on officers' parts. And, they're going to expect more severe and direct discipline.
Kevin Robinson is an ASU professor and former Phoenix Police Assistant Chief. He believes the fact that Mesa discovered Clark's policy violation on their own and disciplined him should be reassuring.
Demonstrating to the community that they're going to deal with issues when they come to their attention.
But as someone who sat on Phoenix PD's review board for years, Robinson says Clark's behavior is cause for concern.
The whole idea of discipline is to correct the behavior. If you don't respond to that correction initially, then you can be a liability to the organization, and that's what police departments have to be very careful of.
Mesa PD has a history of high-profile incidents involving excessive force.
If you continue to erode that public trust by failing to address issues, you're never going to be successful.
Wessing says Clark knows he's on thin ice. But some in the community have said, so is Mesa as a department.
Do you feel like you have people in your department who are a liability for Mesa PD?
None that I'm aware of.
Certainly disturbing to watch, Zach, and we saw those videos. You told us about the department discipline, but the question comes up, what about criminal charges? Was that ever a consideration?
Yeah, well, Steve, Assistant Chief Wessing tells me in the first incident, they did not look into a criminal investigation. And in the second, I'm told the suspect did not want to help in their investigation. As for why Clark is still employed by Mesa PD, here's the explanation I received.
If we really felt that this had risen to the level of termination, there's no doubt in my mind that both myself and Chief Cost would have made that determination.
Now, Clark is still a patrol officer in Mesa. I'm told he's been transferred to a day shift for more supervision. Steve?
And Zach, you finally got what you were asking for.
This police report. Yeah, finally. I made the request for it 4 months ago, shortly after that crash happened. And MCSO repeatedly told me that these documents weren't ready until tonight, when I told them we were going to run a story with what we learned and the lack of transparency regardless. It was only then that we got these 21 pages, and they helped paint a clearer picture about what happened when Cooper Lamb crashed into a bicyclist near Santan Valley. The damage speaks for itself.
You can literally see my client's body print in the windshield and the hood of Cooper Lamb's vehicle.
Larry Fawcett's bicycle, a mangled mess. His body, the same.
His brain was injured, his spine was fractured, his leg was broken, the ligaments in his knee were torn, his arm was broken. His whole life has been changed because of this, and it happened in a split second.
While Larry was being airlifted to the ER, the driver, Cooper Lamb, was consulting with his dad, the Pinal County Sheriff.
I know nothing about the case other than showing up for 5 minutes and checking on my son.
Sheriff Lamb was gone when MCSO detectives arrived to keep Pinal deputies from investigating their boss's son. The 21-page initial report reveals Cooper failed a litany of tests and, quote, displayed poor balance and fine motor skills. His speech was slow and slightly slurred, and he had major problems with simple comprehension. So detectives arrested him for DUI, got a warrant, drew his blood, and concluded Cooper was impaired by a central nervous system depressant and cannabis and was unable to operate a motor vehicle safely. Then they cited and released him.
I don't think I've ever seen a case where there's an accident, someone's injured, particularly someone being seriously injured, and the person not be arrested if a DRE believes that the person's impaired.
Attorney Jared Keenan wonders if Cooper's connection to a top cop has been a factor.
A police officer or their close family member are going to get the highest level of due process that can possibly be provided, whereas someone who's not those people may not.
Obviously, there could be potentially criminal charges brought against Cooper Lamb.
MCSO tells me that hasn't happened yet because they have to prove what substance was potentially a factor, and they're still waiting on the toxicology report from the DPS lab.
According to their website, the backlog is 71 days. and we are now at 128 days.
We just have to wait to see what the test results come back as. As parents, we've done the best we can, and we just pray that our children turn out as good as we hope.
It's unclear how Cooper's life could change in the coming months, but for the once avid outdoorsman, Larry Fawcett,
bend your thumb in.
The thumb just doesn't work.
He'll never be the same.
My client wants closure. He wants to know why his life has been altered this way.